You're gonna have the whole thing. I just have to take out the yellow. That's enough. That's your ready. This is your second bit.
Hi.
Are you serious? That's how you're gonna be?
Well, how should I be? Like, where should I put it?
You're on video?
I should take off the video?
Would you see the bottom of our cabinet? It's like, does it look dark? Are you actually on?
Hey, Adam, what you're cooking?
What am I cooking? I'm cooking chicken soup. I'm about to make schnitzel, and I'm trying to figure out what to give my kids for dinner because it's 7:30 and they haven't eaten yet.
Wow. All right,
Yeah.
fine. I'm sure you'll find a
So
couple of hot dogs there or something with
yeah, I got some Shabbat prep
why not?
happening during class.
It's all right. It's all right.
Good to see everybody.
So who's handling the rabbis?
Yeah, Rabbi Rubin should be on any second.
He's all right. Eden doing well.
Yep. Eden's great.
$7:30. Who's there? Of course. Hey, Eden. Say hi.
Say hi.
He doesn't. He doesn't know who does he say hi to. Here, it's me, Eden. It's me. Hi. How is school?
Good.
All right. Good. You're a good boy. Are you hungry?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, Dad, you better start putting something together.
Trying my best.
I know. Hey, look who's there. Hello. Say hi. I don't think I know Jack very well, but hi, Jack.
Hi, everybody.
You want to come say hi? Hi, Sam. How's it going?
Hi. Say hi. Pues.
Oh, Rabbi is here. Great. Rabbi, you're on mute. There you go.
Nice to see everybody.
There he is.
Hi, Rabbi.
Hi there.
How's everybody doing?
Thank God, doing okay.
As well.
All right. How many people do we have? Jack, you put some color on, you look beautiful.
That's from playing lousy golf.
Oh, I see. All right. That's all right.
It's okay.
Enjoying the time off? I'm sure you do.
I'm sorry, what'd you say?
You enjoying the time off?
Oh, yeah. What's there not to enjoy away from the freezing rain and the cold? And to be able to have insurance to get down here. So many of my friends are landlocked in Montreal, unfortunately. So really I'm blessed. We're blessed. Century Village is like Machane Masad.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah. No, but
no, I know.
it's really, I keep telling Judy, don't make any more friends. It's not enough time in the week for all the entertaining that goes back and forth. But it's all good. All good.
Good to hear. When are you coming back? I would assume March, April.
Well, I originally in the middle of March, but I have a cousin, my first cousin who's in Century Village. His son is being bar mitzvahed on April the 6th in Washington. And he's come to all my simchas.
So you have to go.
I can't refuse. I mean, although I was going to ship the car, I'm going to go to Washington and celebrate. So I won't be back in Montreal until the 7th or 8th, Monday, Tuesday of that week, whatever it is. So it's okay. It's for good things.
It's a good thing. For simchas, for smachot, always a good thing.
That's right.
Yeah. May they continue.
I see Shirley Gossick at the bottom of my... Hello, Shirley. How are you?
Is this the Beit Midrash?
Yes,
Yes.
Okay,
it is indeed.
okay, good.
Adam, whenever you're ready.
Just give him a chance. He's still battling the chickens.
Yeah, really.
Shechting Shabbos over here. All right. Good evening,
Is he?
everyone.
I didn't see him waving the chickens over his head.
You mean
it's only Rosh Hashanah.
caparot?
So I think mostly everyone has been on before. So we're back for another week of learning, another Erev Shabbat learning.
This is my first one.
It's your first one? Okay, welcome,
Yep.
Sergio.
Thank you.
Me
So
too.
this is at least the third or the fourth week in a row. We've had wonderful turnouts, wonderful topics, conversations, a little debate, a little heated, but it's always l'shem shamayim, for the sake of learning and for the sake of heaven. And I give it over to the rabbi. He is going to present on self-defense and how it pertains to gun control, a topic that has certainly been circulating around the Montreal Jewish community, with some facets of the community requesting armed guards outside our synagogues, schools, and other institutions. Definitely a reflection of the emotional state that we're all in. And again, I just really want to preface by saying there is no right opinion, there's no wrong opinion. This is a space to feel safe to share either your opinion, and it doesn't even have to be your opinion. The idea of the Beit Midrash is to come learn, to come be in chavruta, which could literally be translated as friends, which is the style of learning where you and a partner or partners sit together. And of course, that will involve breakout rooms. You'll have a chance to go into breakout rooms with maybe 3, 4, or 5 other people to discuss. So it's all about the learning. And with a further delay, I present Rabbi Rubin.
Great, thanks, Cantor Scotland. Adam will, at a certain point, I assume in about, I don't know, 15 or 20 minutes, do the breakout rooms. Does that make sense? Something like that? Maybe.
Yes, even I perhaps seem a little bit divided. I'm also preparing for Shabbat because time is thin. I do have my AirPods in, so I am, listening very, very carefully, and I will host and I will monitor breakout rooms.
Okay, great. Before beginning, I also just want to make a request. There are about 5 of you who have not turned on your cameras. If you're simply unable to turn on your cameras, that's fine. Respect that. But if it is possible, it'd be great to be able to see you, to feel like we have, a class with human beings. It's much, I think, much more pleasant for all involved, if it's possible for people to turn on their cameras. Anyway, good evening. It's great to see you all. I'm excited to continue our Thursday evening study. Our topic this evening, it has to do with, it arose out of really, I must say, out of the discussion we had with the chief of police, in which the idea of having off-duty policemen who are armed was raised. It seemed very clear that the vast majority of people in the meeting, at least those who spoke up, were opposed to the idea. The chief himself seemed really opposed to the idea. And it just, gun control is a much hotter and more controversial topic in the United States than it is in Canada, mostly because the United States is an outlier certainly among modern Western democracies in I would call it the radical ease of buying weapons, and the almost completely unrestricted and unregulated regime that exists in the United States, in which it's extremely easy to buy a weapon. I could go into any Walmart, fill out a sheet. They do like a very quick and superficial check on my record, and I could buy a pistol or a rifle, and so on, without any kind of waiting, without almost anything. It's very, very simple. Now, Canada is, and I'm no expert, but I'm going to say among Western democracies is somewhere in the middle. It is not radically restrictive in the way that, let's say, Great Britain is, in which it's just about impossible for a private citizen to get a weapon. Very, very few people outside of police have weapons. It's very hard to get, whether it's a pistol or a rifle. And my wife and I are big fans of police procedurals, British. David Rosen is saying not true. No, it's true, David. It does vary state by state, but it really doesn't matter, because you can just go to a state next door and buy the weapon, which many people do. So it's very hard to buy a weapon in New York. It's super easy to get a weapon in New Hampshire or in Virginia. So you just drive to Virginia, buy your weapon, go back home. But you're right that it is there are different regimes in each state. I'm from California, much stricter in California than in say Nevada or Arizona, which are right next door. In any case, so Canada, as I was saying, sort of in between. I was noting that my wife and I love these police procedurals. Many of you have probably seen there'll be some crime, somebody dies, the police are investigating, and sometimes something happens where they might be able to catch a bad guy who's in some warehouse or something. And it always intrigued me that when the police go into the warehouse to find the bad guy, they don't have guns, meaning the police don't have guns. Right, that is, police officers and even police detectives in Britain, just to take one example, don't carry weapons. I mean, they have guns for like the equivalent of elite teams. If they have to call on people with weapons, they can do it. But the point is, in Britain, it's radically restrictive. Canada, you can get weapons, right? I mean, first of all, there's a distinction made between, say, hunting rifles and pistols, right? I think it's somewhat easier to get a hunting rifle. People hunt in Canada. You still have to, register it. I think there's really a whole procedure. Getting pistols here is quite serious. You have to undergo a variety of tests. I think you have to go somewhere and undergo a kind of psychological test. I don't know the details, but I talked to somebody once about this, and it's quite difficult to get a pistol in Canada. Nonetheless, believe it or not, there are a lot of guns in Canada among citizens. Right, so it's not like Great Britain or Switzerland or places like that, where the citizenry is virtually unarmed. That said, for a whole variety of reasons I don't need to get into, having to do with its distinctive history and their distinctive histories, Canada is much more open to serious regulation of weapons than the United States is. So with that in mind, I want to explore really this fraught question, and it's fraught and difficult because it involves some competing values, right? So if we just say that the core value is the preservation of life and the avoidance of danger to life, right? So on one hand, if people having weapons creates more danger and leads to more death, then the answer is fairly straightforward. Guns should be heavily regulated, if not outright banned. On the other hand, it is also possible, I'm not saying this is for sure the case, but possible to argue that in some circumstances, guns can help protect people's lives from others who pose a risk. That is, guns can help with self-defense. And as you'll see, it's clear that the right to protect one's life from danger, protect other people's lives from danger, is also a very important Jewish value and is embedded in Jewish law. So self-defense is there, as is the absolute value of human life and the avoidance of danger to human life. So some of this has to do with what we consider, guns to be. Are they primarily a threat to life? That is, their distribution and their availability, right? Even if the reason is for self-defense, if their availability leads to danger and the threat to life, then that takes us in one direction. If their availability leads us toward the opportunity to protect ourselves from danger, that might lead us in another direction, right? To make things complicated, I'll just throw this out. I'll just say, in the American context, I think for the most part, the Second Amendment of the Constitution and the great availability, the ease of getting weapons is nuts. The United States is an outlier in this, and I would very much like to see it much more restricted. However, even I, a gun restrictionist, recognize that there's a big difference between readily available weapons in a big city, which leads to terrible violence and lots of death, right? Where all kinds of bad people can get their hands on guns. If you live in a small town in Wyoming, right? And this, I'm not just making this up. This is like documented. It can take 2 hours for the police or the sheriff to get to you, right? So if a bad guy comes to you and you call the police, right, it can take 2 hours for them, sometimes longer, for them to get to you. So if that's the case, right, it might make much more sense to allow people to have at least a rifle. Lots of people in Wyoming, for example, hunt, to have make it available and possible for people to at least have the chance to defend themselves from bad guys than in a dense urban environment where it's a totally different context and where it can lead to much greater harm. In any case, what we're going to do is now look at the texts themselves. I pose a question, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take us through the texts, and then I'll stop, and then you'll go into Chavruta, and then I'm going to show you what I came up with in a form of a tshuva. That is, I pose a question and then give what I think is a halachic answer. But I won't let you know what my answer is until after we all have a chance to debate and discuss. So without further ado, let me do a share screen and pull up the text. Here we go. There it is. And share. Okay. I'm hoping everybody can see this. Gun regulation versus self-defense, the debate in Jewish sources. Of course, for brevity's sake, I can only, there's only a few texts. It's not all of Jewish sources, but just a few select Jewish sources. Okay. So here's my she'elah, or shaila in Ashkenazi parlance. Does Jewish law view legal restrictions on the availability of guns as permissible, advisable, and or obligatory, right? That is, must there be, let's say, strict restrictions on the availability of guns? Is it even permitted to restrict the availability of guns according to Jewish law? Is it generally advisable to restrict the availability of guns according to Jewish law? So it's really sort of 3 in 1. All right, so I'm gonna show you some of the classic sources. By the way, shuvot, long, elaborate legal responsa, have been written on this question by Orthodox authorities and so on. And some of my work is just picking out some of that and taking some of the most important sources that they cite. Okay, so here we go. So the first thing is we're in Deuteronomy 4. And we have this line that seems to have absolutely nothing to do with weapons or guns. It says, "But take utmost care and watch yourselves scrupulously, so that you do not forget the things that you saw with your own eyes, and so that they do not fade from your mind as long as you live, and make them known to your children and to your children's children." Now, the context here has absolutely nothing to do with weapons. It's sort of saying, don't stray after idols, don't do the bad things that you did during your wandering, in the desert, but rather remember the great miracles that God wrought for you. Remember and don't forget these things that you escaped from Egypt.
I'm on it now.
I'll just ask people to mute because we
You
can
were
hear
busy.
you. Oops. Stanley, please mute yourself. We can hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't know how. Oh,
You just click the thing that says mute. There you go. Okay, and make them known to your children and children's children. So this has no connection whatsoever, except that these first lines, Rak hishamer lecha ushmor nafshecha ma'od, right? Take utmost care and watch yourself scrupulously, is used by the rabbis as the justification for simply the notion, be very careful out there. You need to preserve your lives. So this could apply to driving when it's icy out, or playing high-level hockey where there are brain injuries, right? Or doing something that's quite dangerous, bungee jumping, things that are really, skydiving, buying a motorcycle, right? This is generally used as a kind of Torah prohibition on taking undue risks. Life is precious. We need to preserve it. So be very careful with the precious gift of life you have. So that's just number 1. Okay. Now, how does that apply to our case with guns? Well, you could say the availability of guns, readily available guns, easy availability of guns, creates danger to life. It's dangerous, right? Bad people can get them. It creates more gun crimes. You know, you don't want to know what it's like to be in Chicago, you know, in the wrong part of town where everybody and their brother has guns and it's dangerous. So this is the idea that the guns, the accessibility of guns can create danger. And therefore, the first text might militate against easily available guns because you have to be very careful out there and guns lead to danger. Okay. We have another text, you could say, a little more directly concerned with our topic, also in Deuteronomy, very famous, the Ma'akeh, right? When you build a house, Kiv Tivnei Beit Chadash, you build a new house, you have to make a Ma'akeh, V'asita Ma'akeh Legagecha. You make a parapet for your roof. What's a parapet? It's like a little fence around your roof. People used to spend a lot of their time in the Middle East on their roofs, right? People would sleep sometimes up there. They would spend leisure time. In the evening, you get cool breezes there. But of course, it's very dangerous. You could step off your roof and die. So they would, so the Torah says you have to build a fence around to protect yourself so that you do not bring blood guilt on your house if anyone should fall from it. In other words, we now have a second text from the Torah. Be very careful, be cautious. Don't do things that could lead to, you know, grave harm to the body or even death. Okay, you with me? So far, so good. Just a couple general sources about being careful and cautious. And I didn't even cite various sources that are there just on the preciousness of life, being created in God's image. You know, one text says, Chai Bahem, we should live through the mitzvot, that anything that creates danger is to be avoided, and so on. And just the overall emphasis on preserving life, very important. Okay. Now we skip fast forward to the 16th century, way past the Torah, but this is our most famous code of Jewish law, the Shulchan Aruch, by Rabbi Yosef Karo. And he writes in his legal code as follows. Likewise, one has a positive duty to remove and guard oneself of any life-threatening obstacle. As it is said, beware and guard your soul. Right? So Hishamer lecha ushmor nafshecha. That was the text up here. Beware, take utmost care, watch yourselves. Shmor nafshecha, guard your soul. Right? Watch yourself. So here in Jewish legal code, even though the Torah text has nothing to do, this has nothing to do with danger or anything. It's taken radically out of context to say you have to anything that's dangerous to your life, you have to beware and guard your soul. By the way, this can also be and is used as a halachic justification for prohibiting smoking, right? There are some rabbinic authorities who prohibit smoking cigarettes because that is dangerous, right? And we're supposed to be careful with our lives and protect our health and safety. And smoking is serious danger. This is, by the way, just as an aside, difficult in yeshiva culture because smoking tradition is a big part. You'd study Talmud like with a cigarette. Smoking is widespread, was at least, I don't know if it still is, I think it is, in some ultra-Orthodox yeshiva circles. But nonetheless, some authorities say it's against Jewish law to smoke. So in any case. So repeat, likewise, one has a positive duty to remove and guard oneself of any life-threatening obstacle. As it is said in the Torah, beware and guard your soul. If one did not, sorry, here's a typo, remove said obstacles, one has canceled a positive commandment. So two things. You cancel a positive commandment, that is guard your soul from danger, and transgressed, do not bring blood guilt. Remember up here, second verse, don't bring velo tasim damim b'veitecha. Don't bring blood guilt. That is, you'll be responsible for somebody getting hurt or, God forbid, dying. So you violate a positive commandment and a negative commandment by bringing, about a dangerous circumstance. We're not at guns yet, okay? But you can see where this is going. If guns lead to danger and can be a threat to life, then this may justify regulating guns. Okay, with me? Everybody good? All right, just a few more texts. We then, and I'll give it, of course, I'll open it up to comments and questions. So we now move on to the Mishneh Torah, Maimonides' great code of law from the 12th century. In his Hilchot Rotzeach U'Shmirat Nefesh, murder and the preservation of life is laws on murder and the murderer and comma and the preservation of life. Says it is forbidden to sell Gentiles any weaponry. Now we're getting to something more concrete. Weapons. Now he's not talking about guns here, but he's talking about weapons. Now why Gentiles? Right? So it's akum. Right. It's ovdei kochavim umazalot. Right. Those who are idol worshipers. Right. So what does he mean here? It's because, let's say, a certain kind of Gentile, not all Gentiles, but idol worshipers, let's say, were seen as being dangerous, violent people. Now, Rambam is not being PC, politically correct. He's just saying there's some of these Gentiles are dangerous, and those people, you can't sell weapons to them. We may not sharpen weapons for them or sell them a knife, chains put on the necks of prisoners, fetters, iron chains, raw Indian iron, bears, lions, or any other object that could cause danger to people at large. I would just add here, don't sell guns to dangerous people, right? In other words, I think that's where he's going, right? Forget about Gentiles, Jews, non-Jews. Just say dangerous people, criminals, people with a criminal record, people have mental illness, whatever it is. You can't sell dangerous things to them, perhaps including guns. One may, however, sell them shields, for these serve only the purpose of defense. Okay, note though, right, that when it says that, note here that lahagen, to defend, is important. So I'm just going to complicate matters. Let's say somebody who's really into guns, in my American context, someone who's like a Texas supporter of gun rights would say, the purpose of defense. That's a gun, right? A gun is going to defend me from bad guys. So yes, I can't sell it to a crazy person or an evil person, but I don't know, maybe if I sell it to somebody who is a good person with good character is going to defend me, then it's permissible, right? Maybe. I'm just throwing that out. Okay. All right. So we now go on, and now things are going to get a little more complicated. Excuse me. There should be traffic neither in arms nor in klei mitzudah. This is like stuff for trapping in a city of refuge. Remember, city of refuge are where people who have accidentally killed somebody else, like manslaughterers, not intentionally, can flee to escape the wrath of relatives of the person who died. Right? And the Torah gives the example: I'm chopping wood with an axe. The axe flies off the handle accidentally, kills somebody I'm working with. Right? Their relatives are outraged. They want to have revenge against me because I killed their dear relative. I can go to a city of refuge, here a miklat, and I can be safe there, and I'm protected. But you might imagine that a city of refuge has a lot of, manslaughterers in it. Maybe it's a dangerous place. There are people who might tend toward at least accidental violence. So you can't traffic in arms in a city of refuge. This is according to Rabbi Nehemiah, but the sages permit it. The sages say, no, it's okay. You can traffic in arms. However, they agree that no traps may be set there, nor may ropes be left dangling about in the place, so that the blood avenger may not have occasion to come visiting there. Because remember, the blood avenger is the relative of the person who died who wants to get vengeance. So you don't want to use traps, right? Ropes, because it might prevent an opportunity for this Goel Adam, the blood avenger, to come there, right? But you can deal in weapons there. So that's kind of an interesting thing. All right. Now we go to a kind of conclusion by Rabbi J. David Blythe. So he's a very important, very orthodox thinker, who's a leading posek in the kind of yeshiva university, sort of right-wing Orthodox world. And here's what he wrote. This is in 1982. He wrote an open letter to the Jewish pawnbroker who unwittingly sold John Hinckley the handgun he used for the attempted assassination of President Reagan in 1982. I actually didn't know this. that the pawnbroker who unwittingly sold John Hinckley the gun that was used to try and assassinate President Reagan was actually Jewish. Okay, so here's what Rabbi J. David Blythe writes. Jews ought to be in the vanguard of those seeking to impress upon our legislators that handguns are indeed stumbling blocks, which must not fall into the hands of the blind. You know the verse in the Torah, don't put a stumbling block before the blind, okay, which can be interpreted in many different ways, but it says, don't put a stumbling block before the blind. So he's saying Jews ought to be in the vanguard of those seeking to convince our legislators that handguns are, in other words, selling lots of guns to lots of people is the equivalent of putting a stumbling block before the blind. What do you do when you put a stumbling block before the blind? You cause them to stumble, right? You're causing something almost inevitably bad to happen. So he's saying we can't, this is terrible. Making handguns readily available is the equivalent. It's precisely because the morally blind criminals are disposed to crime that Judaism teaches that it's forbidden to provide them with the tools of their trade, right? You can't sell bad people guns, people who are, might be criminals. So that's his point, that should be, Judaism teaches that there should be restrictions on the sale of guns, making sure that they don't go to criminals. So I'm concluding from Rabbi Blythe that he favors at least some restriction on the sale of guns to make sure that they aren't sold to criminals and bad people and crazy people, right? Because that's putting a stumbling block before the blind, okay? So we're gonna shift in a moment to the other side. I'll tell you what I mean by the other side, that is self-defense. I wanna stop there and just see if there are any questions. So I'm gonna get out of the text and just so I can see everybody. Are we all good? Any questions? Any thoughts, comments? Yes, Kendra Stotland.
Yeah, I'll just comment. That source from Rabbi Blythe, I actually really loved. Those who were on last Thursday, we also looked at a source of his that I don't think anyone on our chat liked. But I would have never have thought to use that prohibition for the issue of gun control. And I mean, this is something that is taken very, very seriously. It's not the actual verbiage sounds a bit light and fluffy. Thou shalt not put a stumbling, block before the blind. But the penalty of this is one of the harshest in terms of legal penalties. It's called cherem, where someone is basically ostracized from the community. It is one of the strictest punishments that the Beit can actually impose. And it just shows as to how seriously that prohibition is taken. It's not like, oh, if you trip someone by accident. This is a very serious prohibition from the Torah that I would have never sort of had a dotted line towards gun control, but it just makes complete sense that if you put guns into the world, you're harming people that don't even know that it's coming. And so I just really want to comment that I think that that's absolutely brilliant.
Interesting. Thank you. Well, I want to make sure we get through the text and give you an opportunity to break into chavrutot. So I'm going to push forward just a few quick texts and we'll finish up my presentation, give you a chance to debate and discuss. So I'll share the screen again. See here. Okay. All right. So it famously says in Leviticus, in Vayikra, Lo ta'amod al dam re'echa ani Hashem. Do not stand upon, literally, the blood of your fellow, that is, re'echa, could be your fellow Jew, not totally clear, but could be. I am God. Okay, so this is, a classic example of how the rabbis understand this. Don't stand upon the blood of your fellow. Is, let's say I'm walking by a lake and terrible thing, I see somebody drowning, okay? And let's say I'm a strong swimmer. I cannot just watch them drown. Or I hear somebody calling out for help. Help, help, a criminal just took my purse, or whatever, right? I have to do something. I have to act. That could mean jumping in the lake to try and help them. That could mean calling the police to try and get the mugger. It could be running after the mugger myself. I don't know. but it means you can't stand idly by, right? And while somebody is suffering, you have to intervene and help. Okay, so hold on to that thought, because now we get to a very key source about self-defense. It's in the Talmud. It's in Tractate Sanhedrin. Okay, here we go. And these are the ones who are saved from transgressing even at the cost of their lives. And the editor says, that is to say, these people may be killed so that they do not perform a transgression, right? These people may be killed so that they do not perform. I'll get to what this means in a second, right? In other words, these are the ones who are saved from transgressing. All right. One who pursues another to kill him, or pursues, sorry, it's uncomfortable, a male to sodomize him, let's say male rape, or pursues a betrothed young woman to rape her. Okay. Now the Talmud goes on. We'll clarify this. I know it's a little confusing. The sages taught in a source, from where is it derived that with regard to one who pursues another in order to kill him, the pursued party may be saved at the cost of the pursuer's life? Okay. So in other words, what this is about is I'll read the line again. From where is derived with regard to one who pursues another in order to kill him, the pursued party may be saved at the cost of the pursuer's life. In other words, let's say somebody's chasing after me. They have a knife. They're clearly coming to kill me. Okay. Sergio can intervene. Yes, sorry. Sergio can intervene and kill the person who's chasing after me, right? And is not subject to the death penalty, meaning that would be the normal thing. In other words, Sergio would not be a murderer because he saved me from a rodef, a pursuer. Okay, the verse, why? The verse states, you shall not stand idly by the blood of another. Rather, you must save him from death. In other words, this is a core legal doctrine. We do not have a pacifist tradition. You know, I'll turn it around. If somebody is chasing after Sergio with clear intent to kill him, I am allowed to intervene and try and save Sergio. Now, of course, the Talmud gets into all kinds of stuff. Is it light out or is it dark out? Because if it's dark out, I might not be able to really see the real circumstances, and the rescuer may be held liable for the death of the person who was chasing after Sergio, because maybe it wasn't really a murder. Maybe they didn't have a weapon and I couldn't see. But if it's daytime and I say clearly, then I can see that his life is being threatened. I can intervene, right? So this is one of the key legal sources for the importance of self-defense, right? You may go after and even, if necessary, kill someone who threatens the life of another person. That person who is the rescuer, I'll call them, right, is not considered a transgressor because they saved a life. Okay, so self-defense is very important in Jewish law. Okay, this is the last text, and it's very interesting, especially for pet lovers. You'll see what I mean in a second. Okay, this is a source from this is a typo, Rabbi Shlomo Brody from the United States, but has lived in Israel for many years. He's about my age. And he's a very interesting and smart thinker about Jewish law. He's modern Orthodox, and he has this very interesting text. And just to explain what he says, we need some background. So first, just note, in the Talmud, it's clear that the sages, the rabbis, did not like dogs and thought they were dangerous. Sorry, that was just the world they lived in. They thought dogs were dangerous. However, they made an exception for owning dogs if it was felt that they were necessary to protect Jewish communities or individual Jews. Now, I want to say this is almost exactly the equivalent of guns. Dogs were felt to be dangerous. Guns are dangerous, okay? However, if it was felt that dogs could protect Jewish communities, it was permissible, right, to own dogs and to kind of employ them for protection, even though they could be dangerous for their owners or for others. Okay, so what happens is There are all sorts of sources that go back and forth on the permissibility of owning dogs for this purpose. And what Rabbi Brody does is he just substitutes guns for dogs. And here's how it goes. Guns are dangerous. No private citizen should own one, according to the Talmud. No, they're necessary for protection at night, but only in violent areas, according to the Talmud. Here's a medieval source, the Shiltei Giborim. Today, every area is violent, so we need constant protection. Therefore, it's permissible to have dogs, that is, guns. This makes sense and agrees with current practice, but people should properly secure the guns, that is, the dogs, in their homes. This is the Ramah, Rabbi Moshe Isserlis, great 16th century Polish exegete and legal thinker. So he says he agrees with the practice, but you have to be careful, secure the dogs, that is, the guns in their home. Okay, Rabbi Shlomo Luria, who's an important Polish commentator on the Talmud. That's a terrible idea. Guns in the house are more likely to harm innocents than protect against attackers. Gila, that one was for you. Okay, guns are dangerous, and as in this case, are dogs, right, and so on. Okay, another. This is a 19th century Polish source. Let's compromise. Let citizens carry weapons, but only in significant locations of concern, like schools. Again, they're talking about dogs, but Rabbi Brody is substituting guns. Rabbi Yaakov Emden, another great Central European scholar, 19th century. Or limit people to one gun, or the absolute minimum necessary. So you can do it, but it can be restricted and limited to the minimum. Finally, I forget his first name, but Zivchi, Israeli source. No, the problem is more complex. We need differing rules for different types of people, different types of guns, different places, and different circumstances. Okay? So it all depends. So you have, again, these competing values. You got to be careful. You got to protect life. Guns can be dangerous. So be careful about them. They can't just be, you need to be very careful about that. That's on the one hand, right? Can't sell Gentiles weaponry. Dealing in guns is a problem. It can lead to danger. That's on the one hand. On the other hand, self-defense and protecting against bad guys is very important. If we use the metaphor or the comparison of dogs, in some cases, the danger of the protective instrument itself, dogs/guns, is justified. So this seems to lead us to believe that guns would be, in some cases, permitted. So let me stop there. I'll give you what my answer is after you discuss. We're going to break into Chavrutot, and I just want you to see, what do you think? I'm guessing people came into this already with opinions and ideas about how restrictive gun control should be. You're in Canada, you're in Montreal, and so on. I'm fascinated to hear if I've convinced any of you that Jewish law might speak differently and militate against what you already think. So why don't we break up into groups? Cantor Stott will help, and then we'll move forward.
Beverly and Stanley, you guys should have received an invite to a room. Did you see that? No, you don't see that?
Yes, but our time is sort of really limited, but I will join for a few minutes anyway.
Yeah, join. Join if you have to leave, leave. Well, you can still go in and listen.
Hello.
Thank you. That was very interesting.
Okay, great to see everybody back. Who would like to share any insights, debates, thoughts from their group discussion? Looking forward to hearing. Who would like to volunteer a summary? Marla, I'm going to call on you. Tell me what happened in your group.
Summary from our group, Rabbi.
Oh, thank you, Rabbi. Okay, well, we had an interesting discussion on two fronts. One was whether or not our institutions, our synagogues, our schools should be protected as, if for nothing more than a deterrent, by armed, retired, trained police officers who know how to use a gun. And I think would minimize. We agreed would minimize the risk of someone that. Sorry, let me start over. That the benefit of deterring someone from trying something would outweigh the risk of a potential mishap. And that
Say that again, the benefit of, can you repeat that? The benefit of
the protection to our
Without-
institutions and the deterrent effect to anyone who may be thinking of attacking our institutions, our synagogues, and our schools, that benefit outweighs the potential risk. But there were limitations. We felt comfortable with having guns in that scenario only in cases where they were only permitted to people who had training.
Right.
with identifying potential threats, with the use of firearms. And we discussed a situation where perhaps a congregant in an unnamed synagogue may have come into the synagogue carrying arms, and where that made some of us feel comfortable and made me feel very uncomfortable. But there you have it. On one front, that was part of the discussion. And the other part of the discussion was with respect to the source that you were reading to us, where someone had the right to harm and potentially kill someone in self-defense who was about to commit a variety of acts, and among them potentially sodomizing a male or potentially raping a betrothed woman. And we couldn't help but wonder what happened to the unattached women in that scenario. Was someone also obligated or permitted, in fact, to protect them as well?
To protect who? I'm sorry, to protect
well, because the list of I don't
Yeah.
have this in front of me, but the
Right.
list of people who were about to be harmed in those scenarios that would permit someone to acting in self-defense and defense of others to commit an act of violence, essentially. That list of people who were about to be harmed included men who were about to be raped and betrothed women who were about to be harmed. But
right,
not,
and go ahead.
not unattached women. That was
Right,
not.
so it goes into that elsewhere, and it's I mean
Okay.
it's essentially right. It's essentially if anybody's faces grave harm or death, you can protect them, right? The key source is if somebody is coming to kill you, right? Rise up and kill them first. That's the famous sort of the money quote in the Talmud. It can be a problem, and there are all kinds of restrictions on it, and it depends on the circumstances and so on. I will say David Rosen mentioned something very interesting in our discussion, which was that he felt that there's a lot of expertise in this, that the laws, either in Canada or perhaps more, I can't remember, David, it's just the province. Like if you try to let's say you harm or even kill somebody who's about to take somebody else's life, that he said you'd be charged for murder. Like there's not much room. The notion of self-defense here says it's across Canada. The notion of self-defense or defending somebody else is very weak here. So I thought that was interesting. Melanie, were you in a different group?
Yes, I was in a different group. We talked about how in different countries the laws are different, and there are different philosophies around gun control. We talked about how there's a violence, or there's different ways that you could engage in self-defense, and it doesn't always include guns. Maybe depending on threat levels or the perceived presence of a threat, there are non-gun ways to defend yourself that maybe put you in a position not to have to be ruled by this law. But on the other hand, someone brought up that guns are an easy way to defend yourself. It's just you own it, and you use it. So it's an easy way of self-defense, but there are also maybe other non-gun related ways to defend yourself.
And the Talmud predictably really gets into the fine distinctions here. Like, what are the circumstances? What do you know? Like when they're worried that they'll just be vigilantism, right? Is that the right word? Vigilantism, something like that, right? You'll just, or somebody will take someone else's life thinking they're protecting someone from a certain death, but they're wrong, right? They made a misjudgment. So they go into all the different, and there are different ways. And they even talk about specifically harming somebody short of death in order to protect somebody else, right? So for sure. Okay. So I don't want to keep people too late. I want to just give you my closing tshuva, my closing answers. But Would anybody else like to say anything, sort of summarize from their group? If you haven't had a chance, I'm looking at, I don't know, Beverly or Sadiq or, I don't know, anybody. Anybody
Rabbi,
not?
can I ask you a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Would rabbis consider self-defense to be somebody in a aggressive way banging at the front door of your house?
No,
I mean,
door's locked.
rabbis consider. I don't
Can
even know what
you-
I would think.
Would they be able to shoot those people from
Oh, God,
inside their?
No way. Absolutely
No.
not. No. So, I
Because
mean,
there are some laws that would justify that in the United States today.
David Rosen says, who's I think a former police officer, or no, a lawyer. I can't remember. I'm sorry, David. No, you would go to jail. In most American states, you would certainly go to jail because you don't know enough. They're behind a door. There's not, even let's say southern states where there's a lot more leniency in terms of self-defense and so on. Hold on, I just want to see what David.
Not in Florida.
USA, some states have a cast law, stand your ground. That's right. Right. So Florida notoriously has lots of leeway in this, right? But I'm not enough of a lawyer expert to know.
I'm not, it's not a legal question. It's just saying that people, when you're talking about something as Vegas self-defense, it can be somebody coming after you with a knife, or in Florida's case, in fact, somebody just violently banging on the front door and you just deciding to shoot through.
I can't predict what most rabbis would say, but it seems to be just from what I know of Jewish law, that would be much too lenient. That it's it would not be permitted to do that. Stanley, go ahead.
In Canadian law, if I understand, there'd have to be a clear and present danger. And somebody banging on your doors is neither clear nor present. And in Quebec, again, I've been retired for a while, so I don't remember. But if I remember correctly, there's a Good Samaritan law in Quebec that you can't just stand by. So what do you have to do if somebody has a gun pointed at somebody and you shoot him before he kills somebody? I would think that you intervene. You would not be tried. You would not be accused of murder.
Right. By the way, just as a quick aside, so in Jewish law, if somebody points a gun at you and says, eat bacon, I'm just making this up, obviously you have to eat the bacon because the preservation of life is more important, right? However, there are only 3 exceptions to this, right? So one is idolatry. The other is sexual transgressions like incest. And the third is murder. So if somebody points a gun at me, and I know this is totally different what you're talking about, Stanley, it just reminded me of this. If somebody points a gun at me and says, you need to kill somebody else or I'll shoot you, I have to die. I can't murder the person, right? So those are the only 3 exceptions. All right, let me just read the my tshuva. You might agree, you might not agree. You'll see I take a kind of Maimonidean middle path, a sort of moderate path. Let's see here. Yeah, there we go. Okay, and share. And we'll conclude here. All right. So here's my answer. Indiscriminate sales of weapons. Let me repeat. Indiscriminate sales, right? That is just freely selling weapons without any restrictions, right? Is forbidden according to Jewish law. From the text I cited and from other texts, I feel very comfortable saying that just totally indiscriminate and unrestricted sales of weapons is forbidden, and regulation of guns is permitted, but it's difficult to justify a blanket ban on the sale of all guns to everyone, including responsible law-abiding citizens. And David, really mentioned it. I mean, it's one thing for somebody to be trained, to be qualified, to pass a certain kind of exam. That is, to me at least, very different than just a random person being able to buy a gun because they want one, right? The obligation to protect public safety clearly trumps the right, in my view, of any individual buying weapons for any reason. In other words, there's a unrestricted and indiscriminate selling of weapons creates public danger, right? Which is very problematic. So the obligation to protect public safety, this is the American context, I think, outweighs the individual right to own a gun, like no matter what, right? I come down on that side. That said, if it can be determined that a person is competent and responsible and has a legitimate need for self-defense, I believe Jewish sources would permit such a transaction. This leaves a good deal of room for elaborate background checks and highly restrictive rules for buying and selling guns, but it does not appear that a British-style blanket ban on guns would be permitted by Jewish law. In other words, I conclude, on the one hand, indiscriminate, free-flowing sale of guns without any regulation, I think cannot be justified by Jewish law because of the text we read. You can't just create danger. You can't put danger out there in that sort of way. But on the other hand, self-defense is an important Jewish value. And if in certain circumstances, it can be shown that guns, can be used for legitimate self-defense by trained people who are qualified, then that seems to me to be permitted. Put another way, it seems to me very unlikely that a total ban on guns, no matter what, right, British style, would be hard to justify in Jewish law because of self-defense. Does that make sense? I'm hoping I'm making it so I kind of middle course, somewhat in tune with where Canada is now, you can say. And then it would just be a question of, where the exact line is. So I hope that makes sense. Somewhere between Texas and the United Kingdom. That's where I hold. So I hope that makes sense, and that you feel like you've learned something from the sources. And I'm really glad we were able to get together, study some Torah together. And again, it shows you that these ancient sources really, I think, do have something to say about both dogs. No, I'm kidding. Have something to say about, really cutting edge contemporary dilemmas and controversies, that we can apply these sources to those. Not perfectly, not easily, not all the time, but often. And that just as our ancestors struggled with, well, what do you do with dangerous dogs, but they can protect us sometimes? We have to struggle with, what do we do with dangerous guns that on some occasions, in some circumstances, might be able to protect us, right? And we have some of the same struggles. Anyway, and another time, if you catch me in shul or anytime, I'm happy to discuss my conclusion and defend it and welcome disagreement. So again,
for a quick poll, do you think, does the group think that it should be easier or harder for a private citizen to acquire a gun than to be able to drive a car?
Totally different.
Should be more difficult, you say? Less?
Can't compare. You can't compare.
Yeah, I feel it's
no, I mean, sure you can. You have to take a course, you have to do a test, and you have to be of a certain age to be able to drive a car.
Apparently in Canada, you do have to pass exams, you have to fill out forms, and you have to prove that you're not mentally ill. So
I think that's great. That's great. But
and that's the case in Canada.
So Naomi Jacobson says, I'd like to know how much death by guns in Britain. I don't have the exact figure. It's extremely low, extremely low. By the way, I will conclude on a happy note, which is that I learned very recently. So in Chicago annually, there's something like 700 or 800 murders. I could be off on that, but an unbelievable number of murders in the city of Chicago, which has roughly 4 million people in the greater Chicago area, maybe a little more. Montreal has about 4 million people in greater Montreal. And last year, again, I could be mistaken about this, there were about 25 murders. There we go. 32 homicides in Montreal last year, right? And 7 were in that tragic fire. So the number of 25 is what that was actually presented to me apart from the fire. But yes, 32. So I have to say But thank God we live in a place where there is, relatively speaking, very, very, very little violent crime. It says very few shooting deaths last year in Montreal. So anyway,
So far.
Yeah, I mean, it's in the United States, it's about 12 per 100,000 gun deaths. Canada's about 2, and the United Kingdom is like less than 0.4 or something. So, yeah, we're in the middle.
Yeah, we're in the middle. All right. Well, thank you very, very much. Much appreciated the thoughtful comments, questions, and just your presence.
Thank you.
Thanks again to Cantor
Thank you,
Stotler.
Rabbi.
Thank you.
Take care. You're
Thank
very
you,
welcome.
Cantor. Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank
Shabbat
you.
shalom, everyone.
Shabbat shalom.
Be well.
Shalom.
Safe.
Bye.